What if you could control your emotional triggers? What if you could look at your past and not feel anger, frustration, resentment, blame, guilt, any of those things? If you would have asked me this question 7 years ago, I honestly would have laughed in your face probably. I would have said that, yeah, that sounds great for some people, but not for me. You don't know my life. You don't know what I've been through. I would have told you that idea of a happy life where everything is rainbows and butterflies and safety, yeah, that wasn't for me. That's what I believed. And I held on to that belief for so long because the truth is, I am no stranger to trauma, to abuse. I have experienced so many falls in my life that the idea of ever being able to get past them just seemed impossible. When people ask me, if you think of your ideal future life, what does that look like? I didn't know. If somebody said, what would your life look like without triggers? I would have had no idea because I was in it. I was in that place of pain. I was in that place of trauma and I didn't know how to get out of it. And I was so reactive. Anybody relate to that? Let me know. Have you just found yourself to be in a place of reaction where maybe little things start to bother you, or instead of responding, you're just quick to ignite? Take a breath, because that was definitely me. I remember when I first learned about the concept of the inner child, I was like, this seems woo-woo, it seems weird, I don't really understand, and I don't want to go back to that point in my life. I think when we think of our childhood experiences, they might think of bop its and having to be home before the streetlights came on. And although, yes, that was a big part of my childhood, it's not always the part that I look back on and remembered. I looked back on those timestamps of trauma, those timestamps of feeling not enough, of wanting to prove myself. When I thought of my childhood experiences, that's what came up for me. So the idea of the inner child was I don't know, it's really scary because I don't want to go back to that place in my life, that time in my life. And it also seemed really scary because it was unknown. I had no idea what was going to come of it. And for those of you who are new to the concept of inner child is a representation of those parts of our lives that we carry inside of us. It's our childlike wonder and innocence and play and creativity. And it's also those childhood moments that we've internalized. Those emotional experiences that get internalized and integrated in our nervous system. Because again, we're children, we are developing. So all of those moments of shame, of trauma, of not being enough, or whatever it is that might have happened in your life, we hold on to those. And we develop coping mechanisms as adults, such as me. I was extremely reactive. I was a binge drinker. I was quite the gal, let me tell you. And I was almost always on a good one. And the thing is, I didn't know how to process those experiences of my childhood. And I just found myself in that place of holding on to pain. I kind of honestly wore it like a badge of honor, where it's those experiences in my past have made me the woman that I am today. So everybody buckle up because you're with Des and she's going to take you on a ride. But the thing was, that was just this facade, this image that I projected into the world because I didn't want people to know that I had come from trauma, that I had abuse in my life. I didn't want people to know that. I wanted to hold on to it. And if anything came out, then at least I wore it as a badge of honor. I'm tough. Pain is weakness leaving the body. Anybody relate? Let me know. Being able to go back and work on my inner child was adventurous. And honestly, the only reason that I did it was because I was tired. I was exhausted. I was tired of reading articles after articles, hours of podcasts, going to therapy. I was over it. I wanted something that was really going to get to that root cause of wound, that root cause of pain. So I had an amazing guide, and despite me feeling anxious and overwhelmed and scared shirtless, I said yes, and I met my inner child for the first time. And the very first inner child experience that I had, I was restless and I was all of those things, but when I was able to just take a breath and allow myself to be guided, I connected to Desi at around 7 years old. And it was such a transformational experience. Honestly, my life has never been the same since going back to that moment. Because in that place of working with the inner child, going back into that timestamp, into that emotionalized experience that came up for me in that moment at the age of 7, I was able to go in with the hindsight, with the awareness that I have as an adult. So I could go back with more awareness, with power, with choice, and with a detachment. Even though my nervous system might have felt like I was in it, I was there grounded in the present, in the now. So when I pulled up to that memory and I showed up, I saw 7-year-old Desi, and she was in it. She was in a moment of trauma, in a moment of not feeling enough, and she was panicked and scared. And the beautiful thing was I was able to go back to that moment, detached. And I didn't care about the people that were there. I didn't want to place blame or guilt or attack. I wanted to be there for her, for 7-year-old Desi, for that part of me that was still trapped in that emotionalized experience of not being enough. And it was such a gift, and it was emotional. It was emotional as fudge. But being able to go back to that point in my life that was integrated in my nervous system as feeling not enough, and to go back and reparent Desi, to be able to go back and hold that space for her, to give her what she needed, what she deserved, to give her words and support, to take her out of there if she wanted to get out of there. And I know this might seem like, Des, what are you talking about? You can't go back and change the past. But the beautiful thing is your mind is so powerful because it's a part of you, and you are so powerful. So being able to go back with that sense of detachment and power, you can change energetically in the way that we are holding on to these memories, these timestamps in our nervous system. And it was beautiful to be able to go back and give myself what I deserved, to hold her with awareness and compassion, and to get her out of there because she was stuck. She was trapped in that moment. She was in it, which is also probably why whenever I'm walking somewhere, I was always in a state of high alert, in that place of survival, because I had so many parts of me that were trapped in a thought process and an emotional moment of having to survive, feeling like they had to survive. So being able to go back through those moments of trauma, and again, looking at, I know that the T word can seem a little overwhelming, but let's just look at trauma through the lens of not having your needs met. So being able to go back and reparent my inner child was a gift. And I'm so happy to say that where I am now is a place that I could never have even dreamed of 7 years ago. The other side of inner child work is that it's being able to reparent. It's being able to go back to those past experiences without feeling guilt or shame or blame or victim, and instead being able to hold that container, to give yourself what you deserved and what you deserve now, to walk through that journey of compassion, of choice, to hold your younger self and say, oh my gosh, I am so sorry. What can I do to help? What do you need? To give that internal sense of power back. Oh gosh, it is so good. And I know inner child work can seem scary, especially if you've had childhood trauma. But I promise it's not as scary as it feels. It might seem scary because it's new and it's unknown, and the idea of going back to those timestamps can be hard, but I promise if I can do it, if I can go to different time points in my life, different parts of childhood, teenage years, those developmental times of the nervous system getting regulated and being able to hold that, then I promise you can too. And if this is calling to anybody, if you're like, oh my gosh, I am excited to know what the other side of inner child work is, then I invite you to join me March 16th, Thursday at 11 a.m. Pacific Standard Time for my free event, Ladies, You Are Enough. I'll be sharing 3 ways to embrace your inner child so you can really heal self-worth, so you can overcome those thought patterns, you can break away from self-sabotage, and you can feel like you've got more power and choice in navigating those emotional triggers. You deserve a life you love, filled with safety and trust and fulfillment. And I promise you can get it. As far attainable as it might seem, I promise it's closer than you think. And I'm sharing my story and these experiences with you because I love you and because I want you to know that there are people out here rooting for you. And I'm one of them. I'm Des Caminos, and I'm an embodiment life coach. And I'll be doing these little pockets of live videos leading up to my event on the 16th. So please join me for these little inner child tasters where I get to share with you what's on the other side of working with your inner child. See you March 16th. There's a link in all the usual spots. Love you. And awkward time where I